I should be dead.
Well, it couldn't have been that long ago because you're only 50, right? Right? Yeah, right.
50.
50. Yes, we're going to
Yeah.
go with that number. It's a good number.
I-
Okay, so since the conception of your practice, you've always focused on the morbidly obese.
Yeah, we did a training in general surgery. We did a lot of weight loss surgery. And those early days back in early 70s, we did jejunal bypass. That's an operation that we don't do anymore. But when I started my practice, I took care of all the patients, regardless how heavy they were.
Regardless of how heavy they were, which is not what a lot of doctors do today. They have cutoffs.
Well, it wasn't very easy on those days, and they were limiting everybody about 350 pounds. Anybody over 350 pounds was considered to be a high risk to have surgery.
Okay.
But these are the people that they need more. The most operations, so we need to find a way to help them. So I figured out how we can help these people. It was an uphill battle. So you have to go to convince the hospital administration to go extra mile and provide the beds that you can put the people 500, 600 pounds. Those days we didn't have bed that would go over 400 pounds. So that was a challenge to get a bed for these people. Then it was a challenge to convince the anesthesiology that these people need help and you need to put them to sleep. And then there was a challenge of getting an operating table because the operating table on those days will go up to 400.
So it's obstacle after obstacle, from the facility to convincing the anesthesiologist that take the risk on these patients. So
Correct.
you had an army that you had to convince just to try to get your patients help.
Well, it was a situation that these people need to be helped, and we shouldn't discriminate against these people, and they need the most help, and we shouldn't turn them down. So this was the situation that I felt like we have to provide care for these people.
Do you find it still, right? So you started advocating for us 40 years ago. How much easier is it now as far as discrimination amongst your peers when they talk to you about taking on these patients right now?
I can tell you it hasn't changed. The challenge is right now even harder than that. I get every day criticized for taking care of this patient. I get every day battled with the same factor that I battled before. But fortunately, now we got a debate that we can go up 1,000 and we can do all those things. But it still is a lot of issue with it. One of the issues we get in, you have to consider that these people are very high risk, and most of these people are in disability, and the current reimbursement is not very good for paying this thing. So a lot of people, they shy away taking care of them.
So because they don't have the facility and because it costs a lot of money and then their insurance doesn't pay well.
Yeah, one time I took care of one of the patients that was like 800 pounds, and we did surgery. We kept him in the hospital. By the time that the insurance paid and everything was deductible and this, they sent me a check for 97 cents.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
And
But you knew that was a risk and you did it anyways.
yeah, and, the financial thing is one aspect that many doctors will shy away from taking care of this patient because they take an enormous amount of time, and you have to devote a lot of time for them, and the reimbursement is not enough. And that's one situation. And the other aspect is that these are high risk, and sometimes they are too risky for the skill of some people. And there's an issue that if you're not skilled enough and you take care of this patient, something goes wrong and you lose a patient, then you're going to doubt your ability. And that's going to be a very harsh thing for them to tackle. So you have to have ability to take care of them, but you also have to be ready to work with all the obstacles around the case and try to help these people. And you shouldn't discriminate about their weight, and they shouldn't discriminate about that. But then there's also another issue. My colleague, they would come in and they said, why are you taking care of these patients? They ate themselves to death and you're taking care of them. And I keep explaining to them, this is not their choice. This is a metabolic and genetic predisposition for these people. They have no choice. And they don't understand that this is a disease beyond their control. And they need to take care. And no matter how many times you explain to them that this is not because of lack of discipline, this is not because they eat themselves to death, this is a disease that they have no control over. And metabolic difference in between somebody that is healthy and is 150 pounds is totally different than a person that's 600 pounds. And for that reason, when we operate on these people, and if you look at the beginning of 600 pound show, I said that our success rate is 5%.
Did you guys hear that? The success rate of the patients on this show that he's been tracking is 5%. Okay, explain to us why that is, doctor.
Well, we're looking at about success in 10 years, okay? These people, when we operate on them, we change their metabolism and they lose weight. They go down, 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 but the faulty metabolism that create the situation will repair itself.
Did you understand that? So not only are they doing operation physically on the stomach, but it changes our metabolism. So after 5 years?
Yeah, well, usually, you know what happened when we operate this patient, we change all the gastrointestinal hormone that drive their metabolism.
Okay.
Goes down to zero. Their insulin resistance go down to zero.
So it's not just the size of our stomach that you're changing that affects how much we eat, it's actually you're changing our metabolism.
That's correct. I'll explain that why we're talking about revision and all those things. So what happened, when we operate on them, these people metabolism changes because we manipulate one of the GI hormone that control their appetite, that insulin resistant. But about a year after surgery, that hormone starts secreting from other sources in gastrointestinal system, and in 5 years become the same level.
As before surgery?
As before the surgery. And that's
Wow.
why these people, 5 years after surgery, they're gonna have the same drive, the same metabolism, and if they were eating the same amount they ate after first year, in 5 years they're gonna start gaining weight.
Did that just make a lot of you feel at least better that it's not necessarily it's not your fault? After 5 years, right? How all of us at 5 years hit that point where we start to regain. So Dr. Now is saying it's because our metabolism has regenerated at the same strength it was before surgery.
Correct.
So that means that we have to work 10 times harder than the person who has the more functioning metabolism, the faster metabolism?
Well, there is more to it. I'll explain that to it. But see what happened 20 years ago. Everybody I saw after 5 years, weight gaining, oh, your patch is getting bigger. We're going to go ahead and do the revision, and you're going to go right. We operate on those people. They made the patch, we thought it was bigger, we made it smaller. They lost weight for a year. 5 years down the road, they were back to the same. Our revision success in 5 years that I studied was zero.
Oh.
Zero. So we find out that it was not size of the pouch that was causing this problem. It was the metabolic repair that those people reverting to the same pathological genetic disposition that they had beginning.
Wow.
So I explained that in my book, and if somebody get that, please read it and you'll understand what's going on. So that's one reason that the revision is something that people hoping that it's going to change their situation and going to start losing weight. But the revision is going to have a temporary effect. Okay? So everything bear down the metabolic changes. So to begin with, you have to understand, everybody got different metabolism. Your weight is like a bank account, okay? The money you put in is just like a food you eat.
Okay.
The bill you spend, write the check, is like the energy you spend to live.
Okay.
So everybody got different budget. So everybody got different metabolism. So you can't take and everybody and tell them that 1,200 calories is going to be good for you. You have to figure out what their metabolism is, how much calories they need, and what they need
So
to
like
do.
that 1,200 standard is not standard for everybody.
No, it
And like in
has
real
a
life,
different effect.
we all want more money in our account. We all want more calories to spend.
Well, you know,
Right.
some people live in $800 and some people live in $20,000. So,
know.
but you know, this is the same thing
Got
with the
it.
metabolism. So everybody is different. But here's the issue that everybody misses about this thing. You have to understand there are two components that we're working with. One is your metabolism that we can't change except with the surgery and some medication. In the book, I call it endogenous factor.
Endogenous factor.
The other one is the environmental factor.
Okay.
Environmental factor is your eating habit. What is affected? You know, fast food, there is a enabler in your family, there is an element of depression, a lot of people emotional eating. All those factors are within our control. And those need to be corrected before we consider the surgery. The surgery will work on a component of metabolism, but would not change your behavior toward what is wrong with your eating habit.
So do I hear that the key to long-term success is not only understanding your metabolism, but also identifying those environmental factors that contribute to our weight gain?
That's correct. What I tell my patients that there are three factors that control your eating habit.
Okay.
One is your frequency of eating.
Frequency of eating. Are we on
Okay.
this? Write this down.
In 24 hours.
In a 24-hour period. So the
Okay.
first one is our frequency of eating in a 24-hour period.
I'll call that F.
F.
Okay. Then is amount of food you eat in one meal. I call that A.
A, so for the amount, quantity.
And then is the type of food you eat. I call it T.
T. Are you guys on to us?
That means fat.
Right? And the type of food.
Type of food.
Okay.
So all these three factors is contributing to your calorie intake in the day. You need to figure out what's wrong with your frequency of eating, what's wrong with your amount of eating, what's wrong with your type of food you're eating. Unless you understand that before surgery. After surgery, the surgery will give you a tool to change those components. If you're not knowing what is your issues, you don't know how to change it.
Talk to us about the story that you had shared with me earlier about how you tracked some of the patients who were sort of omitting some of the stuff they were eating. Like, you know, I have those patients who were like, I gained 5 pounds, but I swear I stood on track all week. How they, like, literally don't admit how much they're intaking.
Well, you know, first of all, there is a blanket idea. I took, 10 years ago, I did a study on 100 people, asked them before surgery, what do you think is cause of your obesity? I heard everything under the sun except I eat too much.
Do you guys hear that? Isn't that
Okay.
fantastic?
I am in my period. I don't exercise. I eat late. It must be my work. I don't cook. I this. At least goes on and on. But could it be
That you eat too much?
No, that could not
Never.
be. I got this story in my book, calling Mr. Jones that came saw me, and he came and brought his wife, and his wife is like 370 pounds, and he went to weight loss surgery. So I said, okay, what seems to be a problem? Well, the problem is she doesn't eat very much, okay? So if she doesn't eat very much, why does she need surgery? Because she wants to lose weight. Well, if she doesn't eat very much, how can she be 370 pounds? So, hey, I can tell you, she doesn't eat very much. Okay, I said, how do you think the surgery is going to change that? Well, she's going to make her lose weight. How? Well, could it be because we're going to make her eat less? Yeah. So if she eats less, she loses weight. Can we conclude that she's eating too much now? No, you don't accept. She doesn't eat very much. So you explain that. Next time he comes, he bring everybody, including his neighbor's dog. Say, you can ask him. He doesn't eat very much. So the denial that we're eating too much is a first step for the failure. Because, everybody think, hey, we're going to go down this road, they're going to lose weight. How? And you need to understand how you're going to change your eating habit. If you don't know what's wrong with your eating habit, how are you going to correct it? It's like having a puzzle and you don't know what the puzzle is, you want to solve it, that's not going to happen. So this is an issue that we need to work on it. And the other thing is, I got the book, I gave it to 20 of my colleagues, and I asked them something about it, nobody read it. And that's a situation that you deal with, the situation that people, they don't want to go there. They judge the people, and they said this is lack of discipline, these people, they brought it themselves, and we shouldn't take care of him, we shouldn't take a risk, take care of him. But that's not the whole issue. And these people are in a situation that they need help, and we shouldn't discriminate against them, and we shouldn't bias about them, and we shouldn't judge these people, okay? And that's a problem that we have dealing with them.
So you're not only advocating and teaching us how to live healthier lives, you're really teaching your colleagues and really trying to influence your colleagues to understand this population.
Well, that's a continuous education for everybody. And the reason I started this TV series was to impress the medical community that they should take care of all these morbid obesity patients, and then also to sort of to have a inspiration for the people and for medical community. So they changed the biased opinion about morbidly obese people.
How do you feel that it's affected your colleagues, the ones that have watched it? Do you think it's had a positive effect?
Well, it's not working
As well
the way
as you wanted to.
I was hoping. They still discriminate. They're still very biased about these people. They still are always criticizing me for taking care of them. So that has not changed. But you have to stay and you persist with what you're doing, and you hope everybody is going to understand one day. And this is something that we need to spread the message that obesity is not a patient's choice. Okay? That's a metabolic and genetic disposition that the people have. And this is a disease and need to be treated as a disease. And they keep saying that, fast food is the cause of obesity. The regulation, like putting tax on the sugary food or controlled side of the drink, is not going to change individual behavior toward their eating habit.
Did you guys get that? So if McDonald's takes away the big gulp cup, it's not going to change us getting 2 medium cups, I guess, is what you're saying, right? The behavior.
Everything has to be a positive campaign for the making everybody be healthier and be more proactive about improving their life, not to criticize people, not to say that demonize the food industry for individual behavior, okay? So we have to be responsible for our behavior, and we have to make the changes. So personal responsibility becomes the first issue. And that's just one reason, before I do any kind of surgery, I insist that people change their behavior.
And what do you do to insist that? You make them go where?
Well, we make them to lose weight.
Okay.
And we change their eating habit.
Okay.
We put them on some medication, and we're going to work with them, and we're going to require that they're going to make those changes before the surgery.
I've seen you send them to a therapist.
All of them, they need to see a psychotherapist.
Okay.
All of them, they need to have issue to work with the therapist to figure out what issue they got that stress eating is causing them to eat. But that's one aspect. But then if you get somebody that every time they get depressed, they eat, every time they get mad, they get, every time they eat, you give them surgery, you take him that food comfort away from them. You're going to have profound personality change. These people, they go to divorce, they become hostile, they change their behavior, they become alcoholic.
You mean
or
take away their
something.
food and we become hostile?
They do.
A little bit. And then we deal with cross addiction, right? A lot of patients, I say R as a therapist and a patient, I see the cross addiction. So we take away your food and you're doing great with the diet, but then we pick up the alcohol. Then we pick up the shopping, and we're more promiscuous. We compensate if we don't deal with those environmental issues like you suggested, right?
That's correct. And then that's why we want them to see a therapist before and make sure they understand when they have that food comfort taken from them, their coping mechanism have to be changed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is going to be a big factor for them. So they need to understand all the issues that they have and how they're going to change all those things, how their life is going to be, because this is something that is not only eating habit, it's entire their behavior had to change.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think when I heard you talk about the show, and although it hasn't influenced your colleagues in as big of a way that you hoped, I know for a fact it has influenced the public and their perception of obese patients, right? You, along with your very vulnerable patients who have been so gracious into letting us follow this journey that is so shameful for so many of us, it shed light. And I follow the boards, and I know that a lot of people are like, thank you for sharing that. Or even people who don't have weight problems follow it and say, wow, I have a completely new take on those. And you know, when I see that person coming through the elevator, I'm going to treat them differently because of your show. And so I want to thank you on behalf of myself and the public for doing that for us, because it's a big deal. And I've always said that I feel like we're one of the most discriminated against because people think we can control it. You know, you can't control the color of your skin, you can't control if you have special needs, you can't control certain other things that we are, you know, forced to deal with. But when they see an obese person, we're you know, disgusting to a lot of people. I keep saying we because I still feel like I'm not, you know, over 100 pounds more than I am now. And it'll always be something dear to my heart. So again, I want to, you know, thank you for doing that for us. We're going to just take a couple minutes to ask you guys, we have time for just a couple of questions from you guys. So I'm going to have a runner go out there. Again, see the time, we're having so much fun. It went by so fast. So in just a couple minutes, we're going to also bring up Amber and Melissa. But who has a question for Dr. Nowzaradan? Anybody have a question for? We have one way in the back. We're going to make you run in those shoes, Lauren.
With an only 5% success rate, how do you choose your patients?
What's your selection process like, doctor?
I don't have any selection process. Everybody come to the board, and we take care of them. And
wow. So he says everyone comes through the door and he takes care of them. So you guys saw Christina that was up here earlier. She literally did not have an appointment with Dr. Nowzaradan. She drove to his office without an appointment, and he took her on the spot. We have another question from the audience. Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, right behind you. Go ahead.
What's been the major difference between the 5% that have succeeded and the 95% that have failed?
What is it?
The difference between the 5% that succeeded. What did they do that the other 95 didn't do?
Well, you know, it's going to be a constant challenge. And here's the situation. I take a 500-pound person, get him to figure out what's wrong with their eating habit, and I'm able to get him down to 170 without surgery. What did that tell you? That if you understand what the issues are, you can solve them. But if you refuse to figure out what's wrong and you want a solution without knowing what the problem is, you're going to be setting up for failure.
So you're going to fall in that 95% if you don't fix the real problem, because the weight is a symptom of our problem.
Yeah. That's all depend on ability to understand what the problem is and what the solution is. And it's not that surgery is going to give you a solution. Surgery is a tool that is going to give you an opportunity to correct the problem. But if you don't know what the problem is, you will never going to be able to correct it.
Long term.
Okay? But there are people that are getting to analyze their eating habit every day. I give in the paper and it says, read these every morning and you analyze what's wrong with your eating habit. 9 out of 10 come in, you can't get anything out of them. What's wrong with your eating habit? Nothing. But then there are few people that they do their work and they come in and said, okay, my problem is when I'm stressed, I eat it late at night, and when I get upset, I eat.
I have
and then
enablers.
Enabler said, and my wife cooks, if I don't eat it, she get upset. You know, all those things. So then you get them to solve those problems, and they can change their life. Last year, we did the Skin Tight Show. There were 2 characters over there, both male, both men. They lost over 400 pounds with diet only, no surgery.
Wow.
No surgery. So if you figure out what the problem is, the solution is not always a surgery. You have to know what's wrong over there to know how to correct it.
So you do the hard work, you do the head work, the emotional work, and that's going to help you be in that 5%.
That is correct.